very pleased to introduce our speaker today, and our speaker focus is philanthropy, and her name is Judy Peschio. She was born and raised in South Dakota. She started her business career in the mid-80s in Omaha, Nebraska, working in management positions in the financial service industry. In 1995, she joined an Omaha-based worldwide technology company as manager of corporate communications. The company had offices around the world to serve a customer base of large banks, which gave Judy the opportunity to travel in Japan, Singapore, Australia, London, and Italy, with one trip taking her completely around the world. Years later, she was hired by the American Red Cross Heartland chapter in Omaha, Nebraska. Within 6 months, she was selected as the CEO of this chapter, serving eastern Nebraska and western Iowa, and served in that position until her retirement in 2007. Judy and her husband, Tom, now live in Vero Beach, Florida. And currently, in her retirement, I guess she's not really retired, but because she serves as the president of one of our largest and most influential local charities called Impact 100. And Judy Peschio is the president of Impact 100. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Michelle. Thank you for the opportunity for Impact 100 to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the organization and then tell you why I decided to join and what I see as the benefit, and then just a bit about philanthropy, and then you can ask a few questions if you'd like. Impact is actually a concept that was developed in 2002 in Cincinnati. In 2008, a group of women that were very interested in philanthropy for Indian River County heard the founder speak and decided, wow, we really like this concept. And the concept is, a woman joins for $1,000 a year. Local nonprofits can apply for a grant. In the first year, they wanted 100 women. So they would have $100,000 to award to one organization. $100,000 is a lot of money. Well, they were so successful that first year in 2008 that they ended up with 205 women joining. And so they were able to award their first two $100,000 grants. We are now in our 7th year. In April, we will award 4 $100,000 grants. So at the end of our 7th year, which happens in April, we will have awarded over $2.5 million in this community to the nonprofits. So who can apply? I don't know if you know, does anyone know how many nonprofit organizations there are in Indian River County? Want to guess? Anyone? 67? There's more than 200 nonprofit organizations in our county. And our county's population is what? 150, about 140,000? Close. That's a lot of nonprofit organizations. And getting a $100,000 grant is a big responsibility for an organization. So what happens with our grant applications, they are due to us in November. We have a team of volunteers, members, who form grant panels, and we review and we do site visits for every one of those applications. Having served on those grant committees myself, I can tell you it's a very thorough vetting process. We have financial specialists who look at all the financials for the organization, because what we do, if you are a member of Impact 100, we are assuring our membership that we are bringing forward the most credible, the highest quality grant applications that we can. So it's a huge responsibility that we have to our membership. Behind me on the screen, there are logos for 16 organizations. These are the 16 organizations who over the past 6 years have received one or more $100,000 grants from Impact 100. We call them our community partners. And what happens when an organization, and I know all of you have to do volunteer volunteer service, so you may recognize some of these locations as places that you have volunteered. They are small organizations, as an example, Shining Light Garden, who won last year. They have no paid staff, all volunteer organization that raises vegetables and flowers. To some of the larger, well-recognized organizations like Boys and Girls Club, Hibiscus, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We work with these organizations even after they have received the money from us. And what happens is that somehow getting an Impact 100 grant of $100,000 is like getting the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. Because for these organizations, it typically attracts more money for them. When I moved here in 2008 full-time, I was pretty burned out having worked for the Red Cross. Again, a mostly volunteer organization, and we had come through Katrina and 4 back-to-back hurricanes, and you remember all that stuff because you lived through it in this county. Volunteers doing disaster relief work are volunteers from all over. But raising money was a big part of that. For any organization that's a nonprofit, you typically have to go out and raise anywhere from 50 to 70% of your operating expenses. So where does that money come from? Well, it comes from people like you. It comes from mostly individuals. But I was burned out, but I wanted to learn more about this community. And I read an article about Impact 100, called someone and found out more about it. That's a great way of really finding out more about the nonprofit sector in Indian River County. So I joined, got on the grants committee, and that was about 6 years ago. 3 years ago, I was asked to go on the board. And let me tell you, we're an all-volunteer organization. We have no paid staff. We have 2 other board members in the back, Beth Howard and Laura Stewart, who are our communications team. I can't even begin to guess the number of hours that our board members donate to make this a great organization. We have a pretty organized board structure. But enough about that. So a little bit about philanthropy. There's 2 ways to give. You give of your time. But does anyone know what an hour's worth of volunteer time might mean to an organization in terms of dollars and cents? Anybody want to guess? No one? A lot more than you think. So, on average, you can calculate that if you give an hour of your time, it's probably worth $20+ an hour to that organization. So you start adding that up. So if an organization is getting 500 volunteer hours a week, that's a lot of time. And it replaces having them have to hire a person for a salary and benefits. So time is absolutely critical for organizations to survive. Then the other one is money. And money usually comes from 3 sources. It comes from foundations, both private and public. Like in this county, you have the Indian River Community Foundation, you have private family foundations, Johns Island Foundation. It comes from corporations, and it comes from individuals. According to the Florida Philanthropy Network, they published a research, they published in 2012 research on total charitable giving for the state of Florida in 2009. That number is, or was, $14.2 billion. That's a lot of money, I think. So how much do you think of that $14.2 billion came from individuals? 74%. Over $10 billion that year came from individual giving. So that's how important it is for us as individuals to give. So why do we do it? What's the benefit? I can't answer it for you, but I grew up in a rural area, and my family just gave to their community. My parents started a 4-H club. We were active in our church, we were active in our school, we were active in sports. We gave, we supported. We were close to a Native American village, we helped them out as much as we could. So we all have our own reasons for giving. I think to sum it up, I'd like to share a quote from Winston Churchill. He says, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." Are there any questions? Where did I grow up? A place called Idaho, South Dakota. It's a ranch. It's way out in the country. A lot of open space. Yes? Have they ever applied? Not that I'm aware of. I don't know. I haven't, I've been involved for, this is going on 6 years. We don't, the first 3 years when I was involved, we don't disclose the names of the organizations that apply for grants. So it's possible they have, I can't tell you for sure. But it's an opportunity. And the other thing I would suggest is if you are volunteering at an organization, let them know about Impact and encourage them to apply for a grant. We have a website. In fact, we have brochures in the back. It's got our website on it. The website is www.impact100ir.com. And we open it up to most any organization in the community. Other questions? Yes. More than once? Let me look at this. Sebastian Charter Junior High and Orca, Trader Coast Community Health. Okay? And we do not limit the number of times an organization can receive a grant application from us. But again, it would be unusual for an organization to apply 2 years in a row simply because once they receive the $100,000 grant, they have 2 years to implement that project. So most of the time they're busy finishing up their first project before they can do another project. Yes, Michelle?
One of those understated projects that usually these organizations use their $100,000.
I'm going to kind of circle around that. We award grants in 4 areas of focus: family, education, health and wellness, and enrichment environment. I think one of the most impactful, transformative projects was to the Education Foundation for Indian River County School System. It was used to purchase something called Foursquare, which was a big application that they put on their main server in the system that would allow students and teachers to use handheld devices as part of their educational process. And so now their biggest challenge is not every student has a device, but they're working on that. But it's certainly changed the way, and I'm assuming in this school you all do that, but it's certainly changed the way students are learning and the way teachers are teaching for the Education Foundation. The other one was the one last year, Scott Center. There were no services available in this county for children with autism. So parents would have to drive their children out of county, sometimes to Melbourne, even out of state, to get the help that they needed for those children. So with the grant, they were able to open an autism center here in Vero Beach. Now it's small, they're starting out small, but as they build, they will be able to take on more and more families who need these services. Any other questions?